So I learnt something interesting the other day, which is always a nice thing to be able to say. The reason we celebrate Easter, when we do, as a movable sort of feast, we never know from one year to the next when it's going to be, is because Easter always falls on the first Sunday after the first full moon on or after the spring equinox. Yes, which I did not know. This is because, in the words of an author that I was reading about this way Easter coincides with the greening of the earth. This was apparently decided by the Council of Nicaea, by the way, who don't care about the rest of the planet and are in the southern hemisphere. So we have a liturgical season that doesn't necessarily match up as well with the outside world as it was designed to do, because the southern hemisphere just has to fall in line with the northern. Fine. There are people in my line of work who get very angry about it and want to have our own church year in Australia. Sounds like a lot of work. But I was thinking about that whole liturgical season thing. For a start, for me, Easter happening as the weather turns colder and crisper is nice anyway, because crisp mornings and the lifting of what I find to be the oppressive heat of summer feels lifeful and exciting. So for me, it's matching anyway. But I think actually our seasons might be right on the money, rather than those countries where everything does start to get all springy and lush now. And I'll tell you why. This same thing that I was reading that taught me about the equinox and all that reminded me that while the turning of the seasons is normal and natural and good, year after year, the cycle of life and death is also normal and natural and good, if a little painful. What we celebrate today isn't normal and natural at all. When we die, we are supposed to stay dead. What we talk about today is unnatural, and this is good. This good and unnatural thing is the beginning of the remaking of all things. So I boldly suggest that it's right that this happens at a time for us when darkening days and scant sunlight and trees looking a little bit more bereft here and there might make us ask where the joy or the hope is. Because the joy and the hope are popping out of tombs at the least expected times. They are lingering in the darkness, biding their time in the earth. They are meeting death in the way of all things and then saying, now let's try something different. Mary certainly didn't expect this. She was having a hard morning, poor Mary. She was grieving, obviously. Her very dear friend and mentor and teacher had died horribly in front of her a couple of days before. She was torn up. She was possibly afraid for her own life after being his follower, but she decided not to let these things stop her. She wanted to be where he was, so she went to his grave to mourn. And so she's understandably upset on finding the stone rolled away. Is it not enough that they've killed him, that they've shamed him and taken him away from all of us who loved him? Now they're messing with his body? This is too much. Everything then zeroes in on finding him, so she tells the disciples, they run back to the tomb with her, only to see that not only is the body gone, but the grave clothes are left aside, which is weird if you're stealing a body. The face covering is neatly rolled. Defeated and confused, they all head home. And Mary is left alone, weeping in the garden. She sees two angels who ask her what's happening. She still doesn't know what's going on. My Lord is missing, she tells them. I don't know where he is. And then Mary sees someone who asks her what she's doing. Someone she thinks is the gardener, in one of the cleverest lines in one of the most beautiful stories in any gospel. She tells the gardener, so she thinks what is wrong, thinking that perhaps he took the body for some reason and can help her. And then the gardener calls her name. and she knows. It is her teacher, her Rabboni, and he has begun a new creation, brought light from darkness, life from death, birth from nothing. Suddenly it all makes an amazing kind of sense. He is the gardener who will bring all things into newness of self. This is not an ending story, this is a beginning of a story. Jesus, who loves her, calls her name, and she knows. And we know that all foregone conclusions are wrong. Death is no longer the end. The impossible can happen. That life is tragic, yes. But it is not only tragic. In this garden, all things can be reborn. But not necessarily will things be remade, at least not in the way we might expect or hope. Jesus tells her almost immediately, "Don't hold on to me," which rings harshly in this very vulnerable moment. But perhaps he knew it from her face and from her use of the old name Rabboni. She's thinking, all will be well. He's here again with us. Because joy has come, yes. The impossible has happened, yes. But he's changed. She didn't even recognize him at first. He won't be staying, not in the same way. Newness is powerful, but can bring things we don't expect. Hope in real form is exciting and lovely, but perhaps, most of all, always surprising. But the resurrection is not here to give us exactly what we're ready for or what we deserve, thanks be to God. It's here to call us beyond the mournful narratives we tell about ourselves or our church. It's here to sing us into a new way of being, beyond our wildest hopes for how things will turn out. I know that this being a resurrection people is difficult, to say the least. It might not be your bag at all. What a thing to hold on to. I don't always, honestly. You get distracted by life, don't you? I don't always live like a person who belongs to or has been rejuvenated by the resurrection of her Lord. I'll tell you that for sure. Lord knows life can be difficult and more than difficult. It's hard among stories of war and fear and death and a warming planet and an increasingly cynical world to hold on to the idea that things might be redeemed, that under all that causes pain, there may be a deeper story, one of light and love and the enduring power of God to transform all that's wrong into something right. Jesus knew that too. Jesus didn't skip over these hard parts. He didn't avoid being hurt and brokenhearted and tortured and abandoned and killed and jump right to the good stuff. No, instead, by walking through hell, and the closest you can come on earth to hell, he's paved a way for us to know that hell isn't all there is, that oppression shall cease, that pain will end, that the weak will find strength, the poor comfort, the heartbroken solace. Holiness is on the attack, as my friend Matt Julius would say, seeking out all that crumbles in the face of love. The presence of God bursts from a tomb and sets about making all things holy in time. We still see the bad parts, of course, and know them and wear them and carry them. But they are no longer things that have to trap us in shame or isolation or fear. Jesus is there too. The resurrection calls us to live as if it names us, rather than the worst parts of our lives. I see the resurrection shining in the people who refuse to stop fighting for justice, who take to the streets to loudly cry for the rights of others, who gently and quietly love and care for people inside and outside of their lives. We see it in the cycles of nature around us. We smell it new every morning. Even as I sometimes don't, or as we sometimes don't feel that new life Jesus has already offered to us, it's here, pulsating around the world, rejuvenating lives and being stirred through the hearts of others. That's the beauty of the resurrection, of the garden that Jesus is cultivating. It's not the resurrection because we feel it or think it is. It's the resurrection because Jesus is walking around calling your name, offering you and us all a chance to be a part of what is growing, wild and tumultuous and full of colour and shocking beauty. Even when we can't believe that that's the case, even when we least expect it, and maybe in a way that we would never imagine. If this morning, like Mary, you're having a hard time believing in the impossible, or you want to sit in the dark, or you feel your sadness welling up inside you, that's all right, because you're given it anyway. And one of the wonders of being a part of a community of faith is that this community of the faithful can hold your joy and your belief for you when you find it too hard, and wait patiently for the day that you awaken to the resurrection hope that's lying all around you. One final word of warning. The other thing that this unnatural occurrence might do is change us. Mary didn't just have a much better day or stop crying. She was changed from a grieving woman to an apostle. "I've seen the Lord" is the glorious message she carries from the garden. And what better message is there for any of us to carry? She doesn't just receive good news, she is moved and changed to act on it. She is the bearer now of the resurrection, bearing this good news to others. And similarly, the resurrection is something that we now carry. Not something we report on or have to prove or remember fondly with rituals and candles and pretty garden stock images, as lovely as some of those things are. It is something that we are called to embody, that we're invited to embody. We are called to and gifted resurrection life. And this means that we get to actually live as if we were renewed, as if the old ways of thinking didn't matter, as if despair and rejection and religious hypocrisy and pain and death don't get the last word. Just as Jesus is once and always entering into our lives, blessing us in our pain and loss and despair by living these things with us, so is the resurrection of Jesus bursting then and always into our reality, brimming with transformation and opportunity and life. As we hear this story every year on this day, may we remember that our lives, as hard as it can be to believe some days, are the story of resurrection, or can be. This became about more than a body in a certain place and time. The instant Jesus began talking to people outside of the tomb and telling them to spread the word. So as the days get shorter and we miss the lovely blooms in our gardens, although it looks like we're doing fine, and you begin to long for warmer days, let's remember that onto a grim and hurting world a new light has dawned. That in this garden, things grow all year round in plenty and abundance. And that maybe, just maybe, this season of our lives won't look at all like we expect. Christ is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Amen.